Hey folks, welcome to another set of 8th grade science video notes. Today we're going to talk about factors that influence reproductive success for organisms. This set of notes will cover these standards, which ask you to be able to create arguments to explain how animal behavior and plant structures can affect the likelihood of those organisms reproducing, and to explain how environmental and genetic factors influence the growth of organisms. Let's get started. Before we really get into it, let's briefly go over the two types of reproduction: asexual and sexual. These are both very important and each have their own advantages and disadvantages. For instance, asexual reproduction only requires one parent, so it's a fairly easy process to undergo. However, it usually produces an exact clone of that parent, unless some genetic mutation occurs in the process. This leads to little variation in the population of those organisms, which can make it harder for them to withstand environmental changes. Bacteria, starfish, and some plants are examples of organisms that reproduce asexually. An advantage to asexual reproduction is that the process is usually fairly quick, so a lot of offspring can be produced fairly quickly. On the other hand, sexual reproduction requires two parents. This means the process is automatically slowed down, as the two parents have to come together, right? The main advantage to sexual reproduction is that the offspring are genetically different from each other. In fact, they have a random combination of the genes of those two parents. This is an advantage because even if some drastic environmental change occurs, it's likely that at least some of the offspring will have the right traits to be able to survive. Not only is the process slowed down by having to find a mate first, but also it's just generally slower. So now that we know about the two types of reproduction, we need to understand what it means for an organism to have reproductive success. In order to have reproductive success, the organism must not only create offspring, but also keep that offspring alive. It's not just about making new organisms, it's about making sure that they live long enough to create their own offspring so that the species continues. For plants participating in an asexual reproduction, that means they'll need assistance from bees or other insects to spread their pollen to other plants, or birds or the wind to be able to spread their seeds out. If the seeds just fell and grew up in the same spot that the parent organism exists, it would get too crowded and there would be less chance for survival. Then, once the offspring has been made, it has to be in an environment that it can survive in. For animals participating in sexual reproduction, they first have to find and attract a mate. This is why some animals, like birds, often have really bright colors on them that they can use to get the attention of a potential mate. Then, once they make their offspring, they have to take care of it and make sure it survives long enough to create its own offspring. The two factors that influence the growth of an organism are genetic factors and environmental factors. Genetically speaking, some offspring will be better fit for survival. They might have traits that are more beneficial than other offspring. For instance, plants with weak stalks are likely to be blown over in the wind and die, but other plants with strong stalks will survive. They also might have larger leaves so that they can create more food through photosynthesis, or have more attractive flowers so that birds are more attracted to them and can spread their seeds around. Animals might have the right traits to fit in their environment, like long fur for colder climates, or have strong, fast legs to outrun predators. The organisms that don't have these traits will not survive for long and likely won't be able to reproduce and pass on their genes to the next generation. We'll learn a lot more about the types of reproduction and factors that influence growth and reproduction in later lessons. But for now, the basic idea is the important part. That's all for today, folks. As always, if you have any questions, ask.